We are back to wrap up the end of an exciting 2024. Look ahead to 2025, talking about the latest in crypto, equities. We'll even mention the bond market a little bit. That and much more today on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us today, everybody. As we get going, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. Remember, nothing Kevin or I say is financial advice, so please do your own research before making any buys or sells in the markets. Kev, I hope you had a great Christmas. The markets are showing some volatility the last few days so far this week, and it's setting up to be a really, really interesting 2025.
Yeah, don't we know it? Yeah, it's good to be back. I was glad to hear the intro music again. Feels like we haven't been here for a while. Holidays always a little bit busy, but doesn't mean that aren't things kind of happening in the market. To think about where we were last year, it was just a Santa rally, right? And the year before that, kind of another Santa rally that we got. Very different way to end the year this year, given how the index have been performing along with crypto. Tether's not even printing money anymore. What's going on? What's 2025 going to be? Biden's closing the market on January 9th. Why is that an important date? I'm going to find out today. But I am absolutely jacked about what we're doing going into next year. And I think it's going to be a very fast-paced start to the year in 2025.
Let's kind of go back over the last week or so. We've seen a pretty big drawdown in the crypto market, peaked at 106K. We saw Wix up to 108K back on the 17th. Since then, it has been a pretty steep drawdown. Saw Bitcoin get below 92K earlier today, has recovered a bit to 94. Similar with the alt market, we saw some big fall offs. ETH, got over 4K for a little bit, back down, it hit all the way to 3,100, stabilized now at 3,400. Same with Solana, big pullback there. In the equity markets, we saw things open up pretty red on the day. They have begun to recover a little bit. I think there's a lot of hesitation and uncertainty and some fear in the markets right now for the first time in a while, where we have all of this debt that we see needs to be refinanced next year. We see the bond markets sending up some red flags with the 10-year rate absolutely skyrocketing over the last week. So I think there's a lot of people who I think some people are taking profits at the end of the year. I think some people are going to wait until January 1st to take some profits as well. I might be one of those people. So there's a lot to digest and kind of wrap your head around. We have, inauguration in January. We have, what is Trump going to do about crypto? How are the markets going to respond to that? The Bitcoin ETF being heralded as the most successful ETF launch in history. I mean, there's a lot to kind of take apart right now. And it's at a time where most people aren't paying attention because, it's the end of the year, many other things on the mind, but we still need to be, eyes ahead, locked in on the markets.
Absolutely. Just to kick off the show, because I think it's a really good segue from you saying that people aren't necessarily paying attention to the markets. Something that we've covered probably since March of 2023 needs mentioning today because last week it was a massive drain on the system. And the funny thing is no one batted an eye. Let me just pull up the number. Here it is. Let me just share this. Obviously, the bank term funding program is what I'm alluding to here. But boom, down 55.65% as of last week. Only $5.7 billion left in this thing. Why is this important? Because it's kind of mirroring the emergency repo drain that we got in January of 2020. It's just something that we continue to watch. And when the market's rallying, this thing dumps. And it doesn't mean that, the market's going to probably, the market, when it sells off, it's not using the facilities. Facilities are going to drain regardless as we get further and further into, this period of time where all this has to be paid back. But why this is important is because if we're looking at this, we're looking at the VIX as well, which we're going to show in a second. this ain't going to make it, I don't think, very far into the Trump presidency. I'm just saying, I'm looking at this, sunshines and rainbows. Everyone's excited about crypto. There's a lot of things we got to discuss today that are going across the markets that just aren't bullish one bit. And somehow I'm still bullish on this market in a different way. But let's look at the VIX as well, just because I brought that up. So again, this thing's draining. I don't think it's going to survive 3 or 4 more weeks. I think it'll be gone in 3 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks into the Trump presidency will be the furthest I'll go and say that we have money still in the BTFP. But if we look at what's going on in, let's see the indexes real quick. Just looking at the S&P, obviously, you're just kissing the bottom end of the 50 moving average. You look at the NASDAQ, you bounced off the 50 moving average. And if you're in the Dow, well, you kissed it and you got rejected from it. The 200 is looking like a pretty good place to, see if that holds or not. The Dow Jones obviously leading the charge in terms of the index pulling back. The funny thing is I'm not sharing my screen right now to any of this, which is wild because I haven't done the show in like 3 weeks. Going back, yeah, here we are. This is the S&P, obviously kissing that 50 moving average. NASDAQ holding above it. Obviously, the tech sector still remaining somewhat strong. The fact that Apple's almost 4 trillion, or maybe it is over 4 trillion at this point. And then the Dow Jones, testing that 50 moving average, getting rejected from it. The 200 is what we're looking at. But the interesting thing to me that kind of lines up with what we're looking forward to in 2025 and why I think that there could be a bit of a VIX crush and also maybe a bit of a market rally in different sectors of the market, even though we're starting to see a lot of rollover, is that when it comes to the VIX, we've charted it pretty well. Every time that it breaks out of the parallel triangle, this triangle pattern, it tends to pump significantly. That's how we were able to predict, the yen carry trade that came in August. Broke out of this one in June, July. Next thing you know, August, what was it? August 3rd or 4th? August 5th. August 5th, that Monday morning, shot all the way up to 65. And then, it came back down really quickly. And we had a bit of a breakout here on Tuesday, December 17th, or Wednesday, December 18th, which would have been FOMC, and it started putting in another downward triangular pattern. But why is this important? Last night, I was saying 1950 would look like a really good level for the VIX to test, and then it'd probably get crushed afterwards. We almost hit it. And if I'm using this line, if we're charting it accurately, it would have hit here, but I'm okay with it not hitting that. And we're just still finding resistance along this trend line. What does that mean? That means that I think we're going to have one more major VIX crush going into probably January 20th. And the reason I say that is because I look at this and where it ends January 8th, 2025, January 9th. We had a market closure on January 9th now. For the Jimmy Carter Day of Remembrance. Peanut farmers and sausage makers. I don't know where that joke's going. Sausage sandwich.
Let's just, R.I.P. Jimmy.
Yeah, I got nothing against Jimmy Carter, but
let's keep this moving.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is the last time the VIX popped off, it took roughly about 12 to 13 trading days from that 6th. What was this? The 6th of December all the way to the 18th. So that was 12 trading days. From the 8th and the 9th, 12 trading days. After that, that's well into the Trump presidency. So that's something that's going to be really interesting to watch along with the BTFP. That's why I think volatility might not pick up severely until January 21st and on. So that's just kind of where I'm standing in terms of looking at this market. I think we're going to see a lot of reallocation of capital, as we're seeing with, obviously Bitcoin dumping. We can talk about Bitcoin in a second, but, we're looking at a lot of the tech stocks. They're red today. Maybe some of that money is deciding to get out, but there are some other lucrative options in this market still, even though things are beginning to roll over. So I think, should we stick with TradFi or should we move on to Bitcoin real quick?
Let's wrap up, let's finish up TradFi and then we can move into crypto. So what else in TradFi has kind of gotten your attention? I mentioned that, we've seen movement in the bond markets as the 10-year yield has climbed pretty steadily since it bottomed out on the 9th of December. We're seeing a bit of a pullback in it right now, but it moved from, 4.14 up to 4.62, which for 10-year bonds is a pretty big move in a short amount of time.
Absolutely. I got the 10 to 2-year yield curve right here pulled up.
Okay.
It looks like things are working out, right? We're back positive once again, and we're going further up away from that inversion point. Um, but if you look at the bond market itself, like you said, the bonds are eroding pretty severely, right? We're breaking out of this, and this is kind of a scary thing with the 10-year. We talked about this a while ago, where there was a chance that the 10-year could rise significantly. Um, yeah, I mean, it broke out of this parallel channel, right? And it hasn't tested back for support. Maybe it could. Maybe this is a fake out. We don't know. Something could happen in the markets that just draws everyone out of the stock market and puts them into the treasury market. And, these yields start to, decrease as we go into 2025. Say that doesn't happen though. We're looking at a bit of a bond breakout here, probably closer to north of 5%. That'd be the worst case scenario. It really would. And where could I see that happening? Something bad in Japan or China happens and they're offloading US debt. We're going to continue to see bond erosion. I know Janet Yellen's already saying that there's going to be a lot of problems going into February of this year when it comes to bond issuance. That's something that's going to be problematic for the VIX as well. So we got to continue to look at this. I think this is a missed opportunity for a lot of people here too, right? There was idiots back in COVID that were buying, I mean, by idiots, I mean institutional banks that were buying this shit at like 0.01%. This is 4.6% almost now. It was 4.6 the other day. I mean, if I was a millionaire, like 10, $15 million I had in the bank, I'd spare like 2, 3 million and just buy like a 10-year make what, $120,000 a year just passively. I mean, there's a lot of money, but if you have a lot of money, this is a great time to be buying treasuries. That is, of course, unless something happens, right? We don't want to see it continue to go up and then you get stuck in a 5% or 4.5%. And next thing you know, it's like 7%. Worst case scenario. Don't want that to happen. But it's something we have to continue to watch. I think it's a very dangerous place for the bond market. This spells, I say it spells, but it smells like disaster is afoot. I would expect it to come into 2025. Again, I kind of agree with Janet Yellen. February of 2025 could see major moves in the bond market in either direction. We really have to see what happens. Black Swan, I think the rates go down. The black swan could also be that the rates just keep going up and we just start seeing the treasury market fail. So two things that we have to keep an eye on there. Let's talk about the meme stocks. That's the one thing that we've been talking about past few episodes. The ones that we were talking about were GameStop and FFIE. Both finance a lot on Twitter, brought them up. I said, hey, that actually makes a lot of sense. I'm looking at the technicals. I think there are breakouts afoot. Looking at GameStop, we did break out of that triangle. Roaring Kitty also tweeted out on Christmas that just a picture of a president got people excited. It shot all the way up to $34 a share. Hasn't done much since. I think that we are probably going to look at this more so in the beginning of January, making a move. I mean, it's already broken out. The question is, how high is it going to go, right? There's some theories that it's going to go to all-time highs. If it goes to 64, that'd be roughly where it was back in May. I'm looking at this right now. The all-time high after stock splits about 120 or so. If this is a true cup and handle and this is a major breakout and we see something like Bitcoin start to pull back, I would assume that the gamblers within this market that want to make money and know that there is a little bit of liquidity still left out there might try and throw some money into it as part of a major short squeeze, right? We have to see how many shorts are still available. Short availability is going to be a problem for this stock and the next stock that I will show in a second. But, it's not out of the possibility that we see GameStop in the hundreds, 100 crazy max squeeze, $200 price range if there's enough momentum behind it. And again, I think it has to be more institutional at this point than it has to be retail. There isn't stimulus going out there right now, so I think it'd have to be a massive squeeze, and that would kind of blow up some of the derivatives markets trades. So we're going to keep an eye on that one. This one hasn't necessarily moved to the place where we needed to. However, we did talk about this stock a few weeks back. It was called FFIE, Faraday Future Intelligent Electric. See, I don't even know what the stock is when I bought it. And that's because it's more of a technical trade and seeing what the algos are doing. And yeah, we are getting a very similar print to what we were seeing back in May when GameStop began to pump. That's again, GameStop starts pumping, this starts pumping. That was kind of the reason I was looking at it. And we were also looking at the Bollinger Bands that were tightening up on this thing. We were buying down here around 115 or so. Today, market open, hits all the way to 320. This was an amazing move. It's up 69% just today alone. Is it done? We don't know. We have to see how many people are covering those shorts, how many shares are available to short as well for people to borrow and then sell. Then if they are able to borrow and sell enough and then buy back lower, then they can crush the price back down. Again, these are people that are betting against this. We also know that if they're not able to do that, then they're going to have to cover their position and this thing could squeeze a lot higher. And the reason I bring this one up and why I'm excited about it is because if we look back to May, when this stock was trading at like $1.50 or so, Roaring Kitty tweets out, next thing you know, next day, okay, from $1.50 hits all the way to $14.35. Day after that, height of $39. Day after that, height of $94. Day after that, $156. This is a short squeeze that I would not be surprised repeats, maybe not to the same level. Maybe it goes even higher. I don't know. It depends on how much float there is. This was the 6th top traded stock in China last night. That's how big this thing is blowing up in terms of just absolute excitement. Now, I'm not saying that this thing is going to go to 156. It could. I don't know what it's going to do. I'm in the trade. I'm excited to see what happens. The fun thing, the reason I got in on this trade is because I looked at the market cap and it was $50 million. And people were talking about Fartcoin and that market cap was insane. Since we were talking about it at 50 million, it is currently $134 million. I think there's still plenty of room to the upside, but I think it's also one of these Ponzi's where I don't know what this company does. I don't think any EV company creates any cars out there right now. I don't think that anyone's going to be buying any EV cars in the next 6 months. But I do think that there are these possibilities for short squeezes. The market has kind of given you perfect conditions for one. As things begin to roll over, people want one more Ponzi, to start making some money. It also sucks in a lot of people into this market. Whether it's GameStop, EVs, or I don't know, or some of the other ones, AMC, stuff like that could easily get people back in the market. So I'm bullish. Now you see what happens when I'm bullish. We get Ponzi stocks going up to the moon. Outside of that, there's one other Ponzi we got to talk about. Then it goes right into Bitcoin, and that is MicroStrategy. There we are.
Crushed.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, of course it's getting crushed because I was bearish on it. I shorted this thing literally at the top. When it hit what was it, 5.0? I think I shorted at like 5.30. It hit like 5.43 or something like that. It's been downhill since. We haven't got a death cross, but the fun thing is that it is below the 50 moving average and it gapped down. Got as low as 301 this morning. Why is this important? Because Tether has not printed any USDT in a couple of weeks. And we've seen what's happened to the Bitcoin price since they haven't done it. Not helping. It's not helping Michael Saylor either. I'm almost call him MicroStrategy. But MicroStrategy sucks right now because he's going to be running out of capital pretty soon. Again, if the price continues to go down, I mean, he's borrowing pretty much capital to buy Bitcoin. If he's not getting that return on investment, they're probably going to take that Bitcoin as collateral. So that would not be a good thing if Bitcoin's price continues to collapse and he's not able to prop it up. It's not going up. No one's buying it from him. Then you're probably going to see a bit of a sell-off. Where does that go to? I don't know. It depends on how much he loses. Don't forget, this guy literally had the front cover of a newspaper back in 2000. It says, lost $6.5 billion in a day. That was the 2000.com bubble. Obviously, he's worth a lot more now. Question is history going to repeat itself? Right. But I bring this up because this looks really weak to me. There's a gap down here to about 280. But if we're looking at this and say, hey, this has no chance of bouncing from this current level, you're looking at $211 for MicroStrategy, which from current levels is about a 33% drop in the market. Imagine what that does to Bitcoin, especially if they're not able to sell some of that stock as easy as they were back in 500, 400s and buy some Bitcoin with that. If that's what they were doing. It's getting harder and harder. We're seeing liquidity drain across the board. And when your own company's stock is dropping and the asset you're buying, that's the reason why people were buying your stock, is dropping. It's not a great setup. Not a great setup one bit. So with that, let's move over to Bitcoin. Anything that you want to talk about Bitcoin, I've kind of not been looking at it necessarily. I've just been following the fact that it's under 100K now and there's no tether print that's keeping this up. Seems like there's some support around 90,000, but I don't know if that's more of a psychological level of people are just like, oh, it's a little bit of a dip here. It's 16,000 from where it was the all-time high, or if it's just like institutions, still slowly adding to their positions.
I think we've still seen, we had one day last week. I want to say it was Tuesday. No, that would have been Christmas Eve. There was a day recently where there's a huge amount of outflows from the ETFs, and that was probably the day where it went from 106. So was that the 18th? So a little while ago, where we saw a huge amount of outflows. I think some's been steadily trickling back in, and people kind of reallocating, getting set for the new year. We've heard strategic reserve is like the Bitcoin buzzword. Whether it's a U.S. strategic reserve, individual states, other countries having strategic reserves. So that is what everyone is banking on as being the catalyst for the next big leg up. I think people are underestimating how slowly something like that would take. Like, that's going to take, like, if the U.S. does that, I know there's like a framework for it, still has to be voted on, still has to go through all different measures, debating. Like, it's going to take a while for some of this to get going. Like, it's not going to, inauguration isn't going to get here, then automatically the next day we're going to have a Bitcoin strategic reserve where they're buying however many millions of dollars a day worth of Bitcoin. Like, it's going to take a while. So I could see some people getting a little bit impatient, and there is this like house of cards feeling to where if we do see, if we don't stabilize here and we get below 90, I could see that being a point where, like, if we go below 90, we're getting to below 80, 70 real quick.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, with the market cap being so large, and again, I don't care how large the market cap is for Bitcoin, it will always be a volatile asset for the most part. Trades nonstop, 24/7. I know some markets do that as well in TradFi, but when it comes to Bitcoin, this thing, it kind of leads the bad news when the bad news does hit for financial markets. And there's a lot of things and there's a lot of levels that are very bad for the price action to hit. Like, obviously, if you can start going below 36K, that'd be, I think, the worst case scenario for Bitcoin and the ETFs in 2025. Does it have to go there? No. But I do think, like you said, there is a fast move if we get below, say, 89,000, right? We're looking at here just based off support. I mean, you start closing below that 90,000, 89,000 level, you're probably going to test the topper. I cannot speak for shit today. The top of this parallel channel, and that's currently sitting at about 76K, and that's right where the 200 moving average is. So that's where you're going to be the next level of support, if there is support, right? Again, I think that the tether 100% is part of the reason why you're not seeing it pump higher. But I do think that there are some, people going in and out of the markets, like you said, selling off here, end of the year moves, adjusting for 2025. Absolutely. I think that's kind of what the sideways consolidation is. And then I also have to kind of look back into what is going on from, I would say, I don't even have it on this chart. I'm not going to look for it right now because I really don't care. But the distribution graph that I had that was pretty much, 1-to-1 with Bitcoin's price, except for the upthrust for the Wyckoff distribution. That's something that we also have to keep in our mind. That could be a possibility that allows us to dump, into 2025. The other thing too is whenever we have halving years, the January after the halving year historically has a bit of a sell-off. That's something that a lot of people forget. So if we look at, 2024 was a halving year, 2020 was also a halving year, correct?
Yes.
All right. And I forget all this stuff. I'm not a Bitcoin maxi, so sometimes I absolutely forget what the hell happened in what years. So now we're looking for January 2021. Yeah, right here. So we were at 42,000. By January 11th, we went all the way down to 30,000. So that was a 25% drop within the month of January, right? What was the other year? 2016?
Yeah, every 4 years.
Yeah, I just need the reassurance, Jweb. Otherwise, I'm going to be talking about some fake numbers on this chart, and then someone will be like,
nope, we don't spread fake news here. No fake news on this show, okay?
That's right. Let's see. January 2017 or 2017, January 2017. Fuck me. It was trading at 1175, went as low as 736. So just using this, 37% move. So there's been some big moves in the Januaries after the halving years. Will this January prove the same? My indication is yes. That's what I would assume. But again, I think some of that money rolls over into the meme stocks going into the year. And that's where, you're just kind of in this euphoria stage. It's like, oh, just money's reallocating from one place to the next. I don't necessarily know if that goes into alts. Like we've talked about it in the past and just looking at alts today, I'm going to pull up XRP and Solana right now just because those are ones that have been kicking ass for the most part since Trump became president or became the presidential nominee. No, elect. Presidential elect. There you go. It was in there somewhere. He was president one time before.
Forget how to speak.
I don't know, man. I've been sheltered away with the charts and all the meme stocks for the past 2 weeks since we last did our show. No, I'm just kidding. Looking at this though with Solana, Solana's in a pretty interesting place. You're far from the high. You're very far from the high at this point. The high was at 264. Currently trading 26% lower than where we were then. Pulling this up, looking at the stochastic RSI, looking at the volume's coming down. The price is kind of coiling upwards, I would say, maybe into a triangle. If it falls into a triangle, it's going to probably fall out of a triangle. You can see the stochastic RSI is getting close to being overbought, and the 200 moving average is right here. Just for fun, let's just say that we lose this 200 moving average at some point. Maybe Bitcoin and January is just a shit month for crypto entirely. You're looking at $122 for Solana or so to be tested, which would be another 38% drop, $74 from where we currently are. If we look at XRP and in that same way, you're not getting those major bounces that you were, right? Back here, you had a bit of a pullback, and then you had a massive green candle all the way up. Now you're starting to see things kind of roll over. If you look at Link, that's a head and shoulders pattern right there. You don't need me to tell you that. BNB, that's a Ponzi. You don't need me to tell you that. ADA, all these things are in downward, I would say downward corrections, where these trends are towards the downside. We're seeing volume drop. We're seeing the price roll over. ETH did exactly what we talked about in the show. We got our quadruple top, and since now we're below the 50 moving average, you're going to test the 200 moving average, and if that doesn't hold, then you're probably testing somewhere a lot lower in the 2000s, 2200, 2300.
Real quick, just go back to Solana because it is important. There are quite a few unlocks happening next year as well. We have a big FTX estate unlock March 1st. To the tune of about 11.2 million SOL, so $2.18 billion with the current price. So just something to keep in mind there too. Like, you might want to try to front run that thing a little bit if you were planning on taking profits on Solana Q1 of next year.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? So obviously, maybe the market stays up enough to that point where people can kind of get at a good level. The other thing is too, if liquidity does become a problem, I doubt many people will be holding on to some of that SOL. Right. That's the other thing you have to kind of keep in mind. So it's going to be an interesting year, I think, for crypto. I think January is going to kind of decide where we go. Doesn't mean that we don't bounce, strong at the end of the year, but we don't know where it ends up. Right. That's the thing. I think we are due for a correction. Does the correction last, 25% like it did in the last halving year, or does it last a lot longer to, 37% back in 2017? Could be even more, could be less. We genuinely do not know, but we will continue to just monitor it. But I do think that the alts are front running what could be on the way for Bitcoin. Again, when I say Bitcoin, we've had a pretty good move down from the heights. You're down 12%, but when you look at some of these other alts that are down 34, 36%, there's definitely a question of whether the alt season is coming. I don't know. I can't give you that information. But outside of that, what is the one thing that you're excited for 2025?
I've been spending a lot of time looking at the housing market because my wife and I are planning on buying a new home next year. So I'd really like to see, personally, some progress in that, rates coming down. And unfortunately, that would have to mean that probably the market takes a bit of a hit. So for my own personal gain, I think I'm most excited to see what goes on in the housing market, but then also, do we really get what was discussed during the debate season when it comes to crypto regulation? Like, I think from a regulatory standpoint, we're going to see improvements. I'm wondering if we've hit peak euphoria as far as excitement over, because retail still ain't coming. Retail's hurting. Like the amount of debt just keeps climbing. So crypto, I think it's gonna be a wild year for sure. But I think people are gonna be a bit disappointed because I don't know, man. Call me crazy, but I don't trust politicians when they make all these outlandish promises, and I think we're going to see some of those get tossed by the wayside.
Yeah, I'm going to make 3 predictions. Well, I'll make 2 predictions, and then what I'm doing in 2025 as soon as possible. Yeah, that's my one goal. But first prediction, and also congratulations, Tether. You are now delisted in the EU. So I think that's going to be kind of something that we're going to go into 2025 realizing that maybe crypto stablecoins becomes what the US becomes known for. I think this administration, if they're going to regulate anything, I think it's going to be heavily looked upon as stablecoins. I don't think that the Chinese banks, I think iFinex, that operates and creates or owns Tether is going to be, have so much strength and power in the crypto market as they once did. I think the US is probably going to take over and become more of the crypto regulatory and also just powerhouse in the world. Whether that's the DeFi that everyone originally wanted, or if this is the pump my bags, I don't care what the politicians do, that a lot of the people who were bullish on the ETF really wanted, debate that what you will. And the other thing I will say is I think that we do get a major market correction. But I'll say it's because of the carry trade unwind. Does it have to be? No, but I think that will be part of the correction that we do see in 2025. So continuing to look at Asia and seeing maybe they're selling debt because there's a problem with the yen, and we're starting to see some of those stocks that they were borrowing against and putting into the US markets start to pull back. Maybe that's part of the reason that we see another volatility VIX spike in 2025. But the one thing I'm doing in 2025, and I'm going to try and do it as early as possible and as often as possible, is take profit. I think that might be the smartest thing that I've learned from the past few years of trading. Take fucking profit.
Yeah, for the love of God, like it's all right. You don't need to be 100% in all the time. Like I will be doing the same. I have some ideas of when and what I'll be selling. I think maybe some of my Solana bags early February, maybe some of my other crypto bags early April, get ahead of the summer sell-off and just kind of chill and get ready for, my wife and I are expecting our second.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
congrats, man.
Thank you. So we're going to have, all goes well, a little kiddo in the summer, and I'm not going to have quite as much time to devote to the market. So maybe that, I think that's part of my game plan as well.
Wonderful. That's amazing. I hope 2025 is prosperous for everyone who also watches our show. Just coming in real quick, we also hit 320 on FFIE right before the market closing tonight. I'm afraid of these because I think that a lot of moves are going to happen post-market. So just keep an eye on if you did take a position on this. Again, that's what I'm doing. Again, nothing I say is financial advice, but just happy meme-ness. And it's going to be a fun time, I think, in 2025. And I don't know. I just wish everyone the best going into this next year because I don't think a lot of people are going to have a good year next year. But I hope that we've educated a lot of people to understand how things work in the monetary system and they could learn and kind of adjust for what could be an opportunity of a lifetime for some individuals.
Absolutely. And we'll be back for all of the shenanigans. No show on Wednesday, New Year's Day. I will be watching the college football playoffs very intently. So no show Wednesday. We will be back on Friday. So I hope everyone has a great New Year's Eve. Stay safe out there. Have some fun. If you're still listening, still watching, like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. We'll be back Friday. Stay safe out there, everybody. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Appreciate y'all. Take care.